So for the stationary wheelie, I'm going to go back to a spotter strap because there's no concern with her rolling, tipping over laterally. I'm going to line up her rear axle along this line here so that I know where she started. And then I'm just going to ask her to get into a wheelie and have her keep it until I ask her to come down. So whenever you're ready. And Lee, how long do I stare at the clock for?
Well, you can do it. You can shorten it for
Purposes.
today's purposes.
Thank you. All right, that's great. Come on down. So you can see when she landed, she was pretty much right over this line, maybe a couple centimeters ahead. And what I'm looking for is how much travel. So these lines that if you leave, you can just point them out there on the floor.
Yeah, this is half a meter here. So as long as the rear wheels didn't migrate farther forward or backward by 0.5, she could still get a 3 for this. So, you know, an advanced pass on the basis of her movement alone. The criterion for time, of course, is there. And in terms of the quality of her wheelie, can you go back into the wheelie again, Mira? You know, she's really got quite good technique. She's keeping the hands moving. We'll come back to that in training in just a second. Mm-hmm. She's maybe hunched a little bit forward, so it could be a little more upright, but that's probably not enough to sort of mark somebody down from a 3 to a 2, although you might provide a little bit of training on that.
So things that we look for are if for a newer user or newer learner in this is quick hand movements forward and back. They're less controlled. If you can demonstrate that. Yep. Yep. And knees way up in her chest. Or yeah, that one's a common one. Or if you lean back and bring your knees back down again. And just that almost skimming the ground with her front caster. So those are signs that you'd be looking for that the person has some more training to do and more practice to do.
Okay. So for training purposes, I think Amira demonstrated the 3 phases of the wheelie nicely, the takeoff, the balance phase, and the landing. So we really don't need to, if the person couldn't do it, then the trainer ideally would be able to demonstrate it. So it's one of the reasons why we think the trainer should know how to do these things. But if not, then you can always show somebody a videotape or have a peer trainer available to sort of do the demonstration. But let's consider the demonstration is done. And let's assume Mira didn't know how to do a wheelie. So we'll just work our way through like the takeoff, balance, and landing. Yeah.
All right, so we will pretend here. So if we think back to our other skills here, if we think of the gap skill where there's that long push where the casters barely come off, or if you think way back to when we were popping over our bubble wrap, there's sort of the 3 pushes that we look at. So if all 4 wheels are going to stay on the ground, Amira will do a nice gentle push. Great. And those transient, I'll bring you back for the camera. Transient tip is that short, hard push that comes right back down again. And so this one is just a little bit harder. And what you'll see is that she'll come back past her balance point at first. So I'm just going to demonstrate pretending that you, well, not pretending, showing that you do know how to do it. So just watch how far back she comes and then comes back to her balance point. Okay, so that's where we're headed down the road. But when people are first learning, one of the things that we can do is have them get used to having a spotter strap and being caught to get over that anxiety. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just do that short, hard push forward and pop back such that I have to catch you. Okay, and now bring yourself back up. Great. So that's a self-save. And if she intuitively does that herself, then I don't have to give her any feedback on that. If she gets stuck there and is a turtle on her back here kind of thing, then we'll give her the instructions to pull back and lean back. Okay. All right. Did I say that back?
Yeah, pull back and lean forward.
Lean forward. I was like, that doesn't sound right. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, let's do it again. Sorry. Yeah, so she's going to lean forward and pull back. There we go. And so what she's doing, she's bringing those wheels up underneath her. So we do that self-save a couple times so that people are used to that. There are a handful of times where we won't do that piece because of people's anxiety, and we may start them in a different scenario. But most of the time, if they can get through that, then they're going to be comfortable enough doing the rest of it.
Could you just demonstrate the difference between, when we're trying to get over an obstacle, we've said we only want the chair moving forward, and Amira just demonstrated that nicely for the stationary wheelie. But if you're in tight space where you don't have any forward space, you're trying to get away from a set of stairs or something like that, then it's okay to roll back for that. So did you want to maybe demonstrate that?
The
different hand-
rollback method to get into the wheelie. Yeah, just a little roll before you go forward. Yeah.
So by coming back and then forward, you end up pretty much where you started.
Yeah.
The other thing we wanted to demonstrate was just if someone is having difficulty because the chair is too stable,
Yeah.
starting from a preset position. So maybe we'll just put a couple
Well, why
of,
don't we just use the ramp here? Just
okay.
just turn that. So even just this incline, if I get her on this and have you just push back, it's much easier for her to get past her balance point. So any sort of incline, you can just do it again for me. Any sort of incline that you have, it pre-tips the chair and makes that easier to get our wheels off the ground.
The little subtlety to that, though, is that if the rear wheels are against the transition from the level to the incline, then it's going to make it more difficult for them to roll forward. So as long as you've left yourself a little bit of,
Yeah, you don't start them right up against the curb or the ramp, you start them back here.
yeah, or you could put something like a brick underneath, or a variety of ways of pre-tipping the chair slightly. Good. So you're going to move on to the balance phase.
Yeah. So I'm going to set you up right here. So basically what we're doing is we're just stopping the rear wheels from rolling. So when we think about the balance phase, there's a couple things that are happening. There's the pitch angle that Amir is trying to control and the forward back movement of the chair. So if you can just demonstrate that. So the front casters come up, but also the rear wheels are rolling forward and back. Beautiful. So what we're going to do is to make it easier to learn, we're going to get rid of that forward back activity, just focus on the tilt or the pitch angle, and then we're going to add that in a gradual manner, sort of a graded introduction to it. So we're going to start with all the 4 bricks or whatever's. You can use a curb at one end at the back and bricks at the front, just something that stops the
Did you mention the underlay?
that's upside down. Just stops the wheels from going forward and back. We put some grippy stuff underneath these bricks because we're on a slippery floor. You just have to make sure that whatever it is, it actually stops those wheels. So as the trainer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get her into her balance position to begin with. As we mentioned, it's a little bit farther back in that sort of pitch than people are generally used to at this point in their training. And so people sometimes kind of fight where it is. So instead, I'm going to have you trust me and put your hands in your lap for a moment, which is sometimes the hardest part for folks. I'm going to put the spotter strap on my hand, and then I'm going to tilt the chair back, and I'm going to tell her I'm going to tilt the chair back, and I'm going to find her balance position. Once I've quickly found it, I'm going to have her grab the hand rims and take control. If you're a little bit off in the balance position, don't worry about it. The people generally self-correct because too far back doesn't feel good. Too far forward, the wheels just come down. So you don't have to spend too much time on that. So I'm just going to tilt you back. And I know that she's there when it's very easy for me to hold her there. If I come back any further, the weight's going to go into my hands. If I come back any farther forward this way, the chair is going to want to dip down. So I just tilt her back to that nice, easy point. And I said, okay, can you grab your wheels there? Yeah, move your hands a little bit farther forward. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight to the spotter strap, and I'm going to have her try and find that balance position. Now, can you bring your knees down a little bit? I also could have said, can you sit up straight a little bit? And that will usually bring people's knees down. So she should be able to find the point that's incredibly easy for her to hold there. And the way that we'll test that is we'll have her do that. So usually what we do to start is we just have some people put one finger and one thumb on each hand rim. So you can tell that they've got that nice light grip, which means they're in that balance position. It's very easy to hold on. And then we just have them do a wave with one hand. Never take both hands off the hand rims. We'll say that over and over again. So just wave. Beautiful. Okay, both hands back on the hand rims. It's a lovely wave. So now what we do is we get people to try and find that position themselves from a little bit out of that position. So we'll have you tilt back again. Okay, now hold it there, wherever that balance position is. And you'll see it just sort of settle down, and then convince me you're there with a wave. There you go. Okay, both hands on the wheels. Okay, I'll bring you forward. Now come back to that position. Good stuff. Convince me you found it with a wave. Beautiful. Okay, and then I'm going to dip her back a little bit, come back to that position. Convince me you found it with a wave. Awesome. Okay, and then come all the way down. So it's fairly similar to that, even when people are first learning. I know you've seen an American already do advanced wheelies, but it is actually very similar to that. People can find it and come back. And then once they realize they are quite safe with the wheels there, you also may often have to tell people, I'm spotting you, but I'm not holding you there. That's the bricks in you. It feels so secure that people think that they're being held in that position. And it's really them finding that position and just having the rear wheels braced.
Yeah, the other thing we like about this technique of high rolling resistance is that people get some success right during the first session. It can take a few sessions to become as skilled as Amira is, but we want some success early on. So I say, yeah, this might really be possible.
Yeah, and sometimes we'll be doing other skills, and on day one of the wheelie, this is all we do. And just so they're like, oh my gosh, okay, yeah, I could really hold that. So, okay, we'll build on that down the road. So to build on that, there's a couple of different things you can do. So I'm just gonna move these bricks back a little bit and make a little bit more space.
Let's leave the front
That's
ones,
good,
yeah.
yep. You're straightening them? Okay. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is, so I'm going to tell her I've moved those bricks. You'll feel them in front and behind. And I'm going to tilt you back and find your balance position, and then just try and stay within those bricks. All right, I'll tilt you back. Good stuff. And now can you roll to the front bricks? Good stuff. And when people are new, they're not this skilled at it. And often their hands will move a little bit on the hand rims. Yeah, and they'll look more like that. Okay. And so what we're looking for people to do at this stage is just to lightly take their hands on and off the hand rims. No, just lightly, don't move them away. Because what tends to happen is that people get a very firm grip, and then down the road, that's what prevents them from sustaining the balance phase. We call it the grip of death. They will not let go of the hand rims. So just move your hands on the hand rims a little bit, just slide them along, good stuff, and then come on down. And that's really all we do in that phase. And maybe that was even longer than we might do, but it's just to get the person used to being able to move their hands along the hand rims, because that becomes important down the road. So to grade the activity further, we've gone from bricks being quite locked into place to a foam mat. And you can use grass. You can use foam mats of different thicknesses. And I'm just gonna, yeah, that's fine. So if this was a new user, I'd probably turn them the other way so they have more room, and I put them at the back of the mat, because what tends to happen is people migrate forwards. But just for filming purposes, I'm going to leave it this way. So depending on how the person's doing, I may still get them in the balance position, or at this point, I may say, okay, it's a nice thick mat. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask them to get into that balance position themselves. So first, yep. So first I'm going to show actually getting you into that, just for sake. So I'll tilt her back and say, okay, sit up tall, put your hands on the wheels. Now, as far as hand position, we really want our hands to be around a 1 o'clock position if the wheel is the face of the clock. And that allows her to adjust her hands forward and back as need be. Mostly you want the hands to not travel a lot on the hand rims, just to release and grab on. But when people are first learning, that's unrealistic. Their hands are going to roll with the hand rims. So you want them to be at that 1 o'clock position. And so what we're gonna ask her to do now is just to slowly, as much as you can, move the wheels forward and back a couple centimeters and keep those wheels underneath her. What tends to happen is people migrate forwards, and then eventually their hands get stuck in that forward position, and then their front wheels come down. Okay, and so I'll get you to get into the wheelie yourself. Often on the mats, there's a lot of rolling resistance on those rear tires, and it's quite easy to get into, relatively easy to get into that balance position themselves. So this is a great place to practice it once they've done that self-save. Once they get this down, then you're going to move on to either thinner mat or eventually onto the floor. So it's all about grading that activity and bringing, beautiful Queen's wave, bringing the wheels underneath the person forward and back slowly and a short distance. And so when people are moving quickly like that, we may have them focus on one thing and say, okay, what I'd like you to do is, that's great, but move your wheels half as fast and see if they can do that. So again, same with training and all the other aspects we've looked at. What's the one piece of information that we can give them after they've tried a couple times that will be most helpful? All right, Lee's going to demonstrate proactive and reactive balance strategy now.
Thank you. And my favorite topic.
Top 5.
So we've been talking about moving
Spot her off.
the front wheel forward and backward. And that's what we'll refer to as the proactive balance strategy, where you're trying to keep your base of support under your center of gravity. So it's just a bit like standing balance, that if you're standing here comfortably, there's a little bit of postural sway that goes on as you move back and forth to maintain your balance in that position. If someone were to come along and bump you, and your center of gravity moved outside the base of support, then you're going to fall backwards unless you move your base of support. The same thing going sideways or forward. If somebody bumps you, you increase your base of support there. And that's the reactive balance strategy. So if I use this as an example, if this center of gravity starts to fall forward, I need to move my base of support forward. If it starts to fall back, I need to move that back. But the proactive balance strategy is you just keep the base of support moving slightly, and it's possible to do something that if you just held that steady with a couple of fingers, it would tend to fall over. Whereas if you keep it moving, you're able to increase your base of support quite a bit over what it would be statically.
Your demonstration location was perfect.
So I think those are some of the main points we wanted to make for the stationary wheel. It's a very foundational skill. It's not just a party trick. It's how you get to the advanced skill level. You have to be able to do a stationary wheelie, and then we move on, as we're going to next week, being able to turn in that position, move forward and backward, and use the full wheelie for a number of other skills. Are there any questions about the stationary wheelie teaching or testing?
Great.
Okay, well, we're just a couple minutes ahead of time here today, so that's fine. Are there any questions about any of the earlier skills or any of the reading or viewing that you wanted to bring up before we close down for the week? If you think of any, as soon as we close the meeting, feel free to email them. As usual, we're quite happy to respond to any queries during the week. I encourage you to send in any video recordings of yourself. We remind you that the certification exam is coming up on December the 15th. And if you haven't registered for that yet, many of you have. But if you haven't registered for it and would like to register for it, there's a separate registration form and a separate $25 fee, which is reduced because you're taking this course already.
Do you have a question?
Yes, we do have a question. The question is there a way to teach people how to fall correctly, like from a curb as an example?
Yes, we dealt with that either last week or the week before.
2 weeks ago. Yep.
And I just encourage you to go back and look at that particular technique. But for the rear fall, perhaps you could just review that to share without.
Yeah, the most key things that we look at is that you grab onto the wheels. So our instinct is to put our hand out. If you think of so many different situations in life, you start to fall, you put your hand out. You are driving, you slam on the brake, and that's our go-to posture. Instead, what we want to have happen here is I want Amir to grab onto those wheels, because not only will that slow the rear tip, it'll also act as shock absorbers of her arms, and then put her chin to her chest. And so those are the two things that we practice quite extensively. And the video from 2 weeks ago covers how we do that in a mat situation, raised up so you're not practicing falling all the way to the ground. And so take a look at that. And if you have any questions related to that, we're happy to answer them next week.
But it relates to what we were just talking about too, in the sense that that self-save or self-rescue that Cher was talking about earlier. Yes, if you're pulling hard, leaning forward, you may go over backwards, and that's the best way you want to hit. But if you do that, you may actually save yourself and end up back upright. So that's really the recommended technique. And you may hear of putting your hand across your face or across your legs to prevent your nose from being broken if you have low tone legs or not moving your legs and it smash your face. But really, the back of your head is much more important. So we don't recommend that hand in front method. It's really grabbing those wheels and tucking your chin.